of allegiance and a prayer. The flag is over here to my right and your left. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and thank you for this opportunity to get together to talk about how we can save our country and to introduce ourselves to some candidates running for Pennsylvania Supreme Court and to do the business of the Tea Party. We pray, Lord, that you will help us remain principled in our decisions and our focus. And I pray that your blessings over our candidates and safe travels for everyone going home. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. How many of you here are first-timers? Please raise your hand nice and high. Keep them up. Keep them up. We have a gift for you. One. Anyone else over here? There's one in the back. Two. There's one over here, guys. One up front and one in the back on the left. Keep your hands up nice and high. We have a gift. Let's welcome them. Those of you who have an agenda see that the next thing is a vote, but we're going to switch that and start with our illegal immigration presentation until our secretary is done doing his job outside. So Mike Chisuli.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. Get my papers in order here. I'm trying to read up on what I wrote. How many of you were at last? Thank you, Tom. How many of you were last week's immigration rally? Oh, great, great. You come back for more. Good deal, good deal. But John really does a great job with that stuff. Where's John at? John, you here? He's here somewhere. We'll clap for him later. I regret not making it. I had a carpal tunnel surgery last week. Kind of took me out of my game for a couple days. Both hands. That's kind of, usually people do one at a time. But me being me, I'm foolish, so what can I tell you? Anyway, I've got a couple of things to read on here that are relevant to what's going on with what's going on today with the amnesty and all of that business. Did anybody catch the Michael Cutler show this morning on Bobby Gunther Walsh? Yeah. Good show, right? He's Michael Cutler's really on the money. We had a real guest speaker here, but it didn't pan out, so you kind of get me and I got to read, so too bad for you. Okay? All right. I'm going to paraphrase some stuff off of WorldNet Daily Report. The real reason for Obama's executive action. Okay? Limbaugh picked it up. I saw part of it on one of his shows. The Obama administration is facing new accusations that the president's amnesty for illegals program is focused on getting enough immigrants to register as Democrat voters to keep his party in power for 2016. And that's kind of something I've been saying for quite a while. According to J. Christian Adams, a former Department of Justice attorney who writes for PJ Media, President Obama's amnesty by edict has been about adding new Democrats to the voter rolls, and recent action of the Department of Homeland Security provides further proof. Sources at the Department of Homeland Security report to PJ Media that the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services is reallocating significant resources away from the computer system, the electronic immigration system, to sending letters to all 9 million green card holders, urging them to naturalize prior to the 2016 election. He cites a CIS letter about the urgency of having people who live in this country participating fully in their communities. And Limbaugh jumps in there. You know the objective is to get him to vote. Okay, immigration expert Glenn Spencer says the invasion of America already is underway. The object all along here has been the registration of illegal aliens as Democrats. That's going to happen one way or another. What's newsworthy here is that it's been learned that Department of Homeland Security is mobilizing now to essentially create 9 million new registered Democrats by 2016 election among current green card holders. They're putting everything in place so that, this is Obama's, Limbau's opinion, okay? They're putting everything in place so that, and Obama decides to go executive amnesty, it's not going to happen. It's not the beginning of the process, it's going to be the period. It's just the last thing to happen. Adams cited in a recent letter signed by Leon Rodriguez, co-chairman of the task force on New Americans, on the letterhead of the U.S. Citizenship for Immigration Services. The letter cites the White House task force regarding New Americans. This report outlines an immigrant integration plan that will advance our nation's global competitiveness and ensures that people who live in this country can fully participate in their communities. That's that fully participate, again, which means voting in presidential elections. But Adams wrote, full participation is a term commonly used to include voting rights. At the end, resources within DHS have been redirected towards pushing as many aliens and non-citizens as possible to full citizenship status so they may fully participate in the 2016 presidential election. For example, the internal DHS letter states one aim is to strengthen existing pathways to naturalization and promote civic engagement. Adams said naturalization plus mobilization is the explicit aim of the Task Force on Americans. It's a new department recently created. Multiple sources at DHS confirm that political appointees are prioritizing naturalization ahead of 2016 election, he said, presidential election. He noted that voting patterns reveal new voters overwhelmingly choose Democratic candidates. A large part of Obama's program has been ordered to a halt by a federal judge in Texas. The Obama administration has appealed the order to Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Change the subject here a little bit. The voter ID law would have helped with this fraudulent voting, illegal aliens voting, and multiple voting in different states, and all the other business that goes along with what's going on here. 32 states have some form of voter ID. 17 are photo ID. The bill was passed here in Pennsylvania. It would have been signed by Governor Corbett, but got held up in the courts. Corbett opted not to appeal the judge's decision as to concentrate on other matters. I guess his re-election, which didn't go so hot for him. And Wolf forget about it. He's not interested in all of pursuing that avenue of. Okay, new subject report here. Remember the kids rally we had, the kids piece last year in Bethlehem. It was a great rally. Okay, the kids from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Well, they're still on their way. They're still coming. And remember, I said one of the last times I was up here, that 75% of them, those are not kids. They're 16 and 17-year-olds. All right, so if you do the math, there's another way that the administration is pushing to get more voters voting the way they want to. Vote for us and we'll give you what you want. And okay, and also in a Washington Times article, the State Department program is now flying in Central American immigrant children. So they're no longer coming through Mexico. Now we're flying them in. The new State Department, the new State Department and Department of Homeland Security program will fly immigrant children from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador to their parents in the U.S. for free. Parents can apply to have their children picked up and flown over the border to them on the taxpayer dime, as long as they have some kind of legal immigration status, the Daily Caller reported Wednesday. The program was created in response to a surge of unaccompanied Central American children making the perilous trek into illegal across the U.S. border and through Mexico, the deserts, and all of that business. Any permanent resident, parolee, or illegal immigrant granted or in the process of being granted the work permit under President Obama's executive order or his deferred action policy, who have children under the age of 21 living in Honduras, Guatemala, and Salvador can apply for the program. It's reported. If the application is approved, the child will be granted special refugee status and flown to the U.S. to receive resettlement assistance, and will be eligible for taxpayer benefits if the child has children and they're under 21. They can come to the U.S. too, along with parents of the child who is married to the applicant. That's family reunification right there. The State Department defended the program in a November memo, saying that the reunited children with the families was safe, legal, orderly alternative to the dangerous journey, and some children are currently undertaken to come in. It's unclear how much the plane tickets will cost or what the benefits will be to provide upon the refugee arrival. Once they're decided to be refugees, they're open to all kinds of government benefits. It's not like an illegal immigrant. According to Tom Fulton, president of the conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch, the refugee status granted to the children would allow them to receive more benefits that the illegal immigrants don't have access to, including free education, food stamps, medical care, and living expenses. That's if they have, that's when they have refugee status. All right. It's also been reported that this is the funny part. It'd be funny if it wasn't so sad, but it's been reported that the public will be reimbursed for these plane flights, which is pretty much a big laugh, because how's that going to happen when 90% of the immigrants come here don't show up for their immigration hearings? Okay, we're going to change the subject a little bit. On the border. There's been reports the ISIS camp has been located. Actually, 2 ISIS camps have been located a few miles from the Texas border, Texas-Mexican border. ISIS is operating a camp just a few miles south of El Paso, Texas, according to Judicial Watch sources that include a Mexican Army field grade officer and a Mexican federal police inspector. The exact location here of the terrorist group has been established. Its base is around 8 miles from the U.S. border in an area known as Anapara. I'm not going to read that real well. Situated just west of Juarez in a Mexican state of Chihuahua. Okay, another ISIS cell is also west of there, and in Puerto Palomas. Targets the New Mexico towns of Columbus and Deming for easy access into the United States. The same acknowledgeable resources are confirmed. During the course of a joint operation last week, Mexican Army and federal law enforcement officials discovered documents in Arabic as well as plans for Fort Bliss, the sprawling military installation that houses the U.S. Army 1st Armored Division. Muslims' prayer rugs were recovered with the documents during the operation. Law enforcement and intelligence sources report the area around there is dominated by the Carlo Fuentes cartel and La Lina, the enforcement arm of the cartel, and the well, it doesn't really matter. A gang the one gang was originally formed in the jails of El Paso. We getting towards the end? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you can see how it's a pretty dangerous area down there, and it's easy for the it's easy for people to come into the country, and you have these people that's what they do. They come into other countries and cause havoc. That's what they do where they came from. The Division of Homeland Security wouldn't confirm or deny the presence of ISIS activities on the southern border. Moving along to the last topic here. Oh yeah, okay, wait. My opinion is that the insurgency is what they do, and we'd be fools not to think they're infiltrating our borders. Senate confirmation amnesty supporting Attorney General. On Thursday, the Senate confirmation of Loretta Lynch to become the next Attorney General, the nation's highest law enforcement position. Despite her professed support for President Obama's amnesty agenda, during her January confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, Ms. Lynch took the radical position that illegal aliens have the right to work regardless of how they came here, a position that is contrary to the current law. And she said President Obama's executive amnesty and legal and constitutional. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Mike's taller than I am. While Tony's getting ready to come up, I'd like to just remind you of a few things. We have a Gettysburg trip that was just sent out in an email today. It's going to be August 1st. There's a lot included if you want to go. Also at this time, I'm going to ask the aisle runners to please pass the baskets. For those of you who don't know why we do this, we pay $180 every time we rent this room, and your donations help us pay for that. Everything that we collect goes right back into the group and pays for things like that. So that's what this basket pass is for, if you're not familiar with that. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tony, our secretary.
I know nobody at the tea party's this tall. All 5'8" and below. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tony Simeo, and I am the secretary of the Lehigh Valley Tea Party. Tonight, we are going to be having a vote on a change, or actually a small change to the bylaws, which has to do with the membership part of it. Give me 1 second here. All right, so if you are a voting member, you should have checked in at the table in the back with Ms. Joy Hemming. And you should have gotten a handy-dandy ballot with yes, no, or abstain. And basically what the changes are going to be were the changes that were submitted by the membership committee. And we were actually having trouble with people being eligible to vote and being actual active members. Some of the quorum, how we figure it out, was like an algebra equation, and it was just a little bit too difficult to do. I'm actually waiting for people that are checking in the back now. As you came in and you got your ballot, you should have also gotten a packet that actually has the changes. That was also emailed to everybody, I believe, about 3 weeks to a month ago. There are 3 basic changes. The first one is that you will have to have attended 3 meetings. However, the second change adds on to that, which is it's 3 meetings in the current quarter or the previous quarter. So currently it's actually 2 meetings in the quarter previous to the vote when it is taken. All right, so we're changing it to it's 3, either the current or the previous, so you actually have about 6 months worth of time at the most to get your 3 meetings in. The other part is that we changed the quorum from an algebraic equation to 50% of the active paid members at any given time. The additional parts of the packet is actually we're adding in specific definitions to the terms that are used. So you're basically just voting on terms being added, and those 3 changes: the 50% quorum, the 3 visits from 2, but also the addition from 1 quarter to 2 quarters, current and the previous. The quorum for today is 30.4, and we have at last count 51, however, 60. So it's now 60, so we do have a quorum. At this point, I would entertain a motion to accept the changes as I have explained it to you and as you have it in the packet. Mr. Tom Carroll makes the motion. Second by Mr. Bill Tunke. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Brian Eichfeld?
Is that microphone?
Well, I'm loud.
Please use the mic.
Yeah, I know. I'm Brian Eichfeld. I was in that committee. I have some objections to the change in the amendments. One of the things, before you hold off on collecting the vote until we've completed the discussion. What is being done is we're changing to be an active member from 2 activities in a quarter to 3. This is going to cut down on the number of active members. If you just come to our regular meetings and you miss 1 in the quarter, you're going to fall off as an active member. That's not a big deal. You're still a member, and it just means that you can't vote at the thing. The other thing is they make it sound like they're combining two quarters. So you can either be the quarter prior to have 3, or 3 activities in the second quarter, or in the current quarter. So virtually in the first month or 2 of the quarter, you probably won't have 3 activities in order to vote. So those are my concerns. We're making it harder for members that in the past could vote if they had 2 activities. We're making it harder for them to vote by making it 3 activities. That's my big objective. If you voted against this, that portion of the bylaws would remain the same, and some of the clunky language on quorums, but we haven't had a problem making quorums. It's just complicated. And maybe they can come back and change it, but that's basically what I'm recommending, or that's my opinion, is I would vote no on this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any more comment? Mr. Chairman Delbaco.
I would just like to say that I did note Brian's objection when we went through this proposal. The reason that we upped it from 2 to 3 is because we want to have active members. We don't want people who just show up for a couple times and then decide what our group is doing. By making it 3, it's not making it more difficult, because we don't only have 3 meetings. We have 2 meetings every month that everyone is welcome to. That's a total of 6 meetings in 1 quarter. So you only have to go to half if all you do is go to the meetings. Then we have committees. We have a number of active committees. The Second Amendment Committee, the Illegal Immigration Committee, the Liberty Amendments Committee, and so on and so forth. Individual rights, the Ayn Rand Book Club. Every time you attend an event, whether it's a committee meeting, a regular meeting, or an executive board meeting, that counts. Everyone who was at the rally on Saturday counts. So if you came Saturday and you came today, you've already got 2. If you come to the executive board meeting and sit in, that's 3 in just a matter of 2 weeks. 1 week, there were several of us that made the requirement in a weekend because there were 3 committee meetings. So we've actually made it a little bit easier if you just get more active and get involved. And that's the purpose we upped it from 2 to 3.
Thank you. And seeing that there is no further comment, actually there is one more in the back.
Not a comment, I just want to call a question.
That wasn't you, it was...
Where's the comment? Question. I just want to understand, you are or are you not combining prior quarter with the present?
It is. It's the current and previous quarter.
Not what it says or.
It says or.
And that's where his
Or.
objection is, I believe.
Okay.
The reason we use the word "or" is so that you're covered. For example, if you came to September, October, November, and we took a vote in January, you would be covered. But suppose we took a vote in say January, February, March. Suppose we took a vote in March, and you didn't come in the previous quarter at all. You were away at Disney, you were away in Florida, but now you've come to January, February, and March. And you say, but I was here the past 3 months. Why can't I vote? Because the way that it's written now, it says the previous quarter only. We added the word "or" to cover that, so that if you weren't here in the previous quarter, but you were here in this quarter, there's still plenty of opportunity for you to use that. And the word "or" was a big part of the discussion for that reason. Does that answer your question?
To me, it says one of the other.
The reason, let me explain that. The reason that we actually did that was because the computer system, the way the membership computer system is a program is built right now, we would have to rebuild the whole thing in order to get exactly what we actually wanted, which was just 3 visits in the last 6 months. So that trigger is "or" makes the system go back to the previous quarter and check to see if you had 3 of that quarter as well.
Why not put that in parentheses after 3 visits in the last 6 months?
Again, it's computer talk, so I don't deal with the programming. It's just the way that it was written.
All right, excuse me, point of order, Brian. We're not having a dialogue back and forth. If there's discussion, you can't go back and forth. So,
That's it. I was done.
go ahead. No other discussion?
Mr. Otto, Slozer.
Move to call the question.
There was a move to call the question by Mr. Otto Slozer. Second.
Do you have a second?
Second by Mr. Tom Campion. All those in favor?
Well, this is to
Call the
close
question means
discussion.
that discussion is over and we are going to the vote.
All right, and he's passing around we gave ballots, and he's passing around the ballots, so just turn in your ballots and...
Okay, let's move on. Yes, please. Really?
All right, so while everybody passes their vote into the middle of the floor, we are going to have Mr. Tom Carroll take over with the Supreme Court judge candidates. Mr. Tom Carroll.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Carroll, and I think I know most of you, but I'm on the board, as you know, and I am the chairman of the steering committee. And the first announcement I have to make is, with regard to the steering committee, we decided as an organization to change our bylaws and become more politically active, and as such then we started a process in which we would decide how and when to support or not to support candidates, and we formed a committee to do that and make those decisions. We have one opening on that committee. If anybody's interested in joining that committee, the executive board will be meeting the following Monday, and we will be voting on replacing that member. So if anybody wants to consider joining that steering committee, please see me after the meeting and let me know, and we'll put your name into the discussion when the board meets. Other than that, tonight, as you see from the agenda, we have a Supreme Court candidate forum. Why is this so important? Because in the first time since the Revolutionary War, before the Revolutionary War in Pennsylvania, we have 3 open spots on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has 7 seats, and we have 3 vacancies, and the population, the citizens of Pennsylvania have to decide who they're going to put on that very important court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court will be making very important decisions that will affect our individual rights, our constitutional rights, our freedom, and our liberty. And this election is vitally important. The primary that is happening now is not a cross-file race like all the other judge races that you are familiar with. Like we have common pleas judges running this time around in the counties. These judges are running on either the Republican or the Democratic ticket. They don't cross-file, so you won't see their names on both ballots. And we invited all 12 candidates for these 3 spots. There were 6 Republicans that are running and 6 Democrats. Who responded to our invitation tonight are the 3 individuals that are sitting here tonight. And I am very honored that they did come tonight because they want to tell us why they want to run for the Supreme Court, why it's so important that you consider all of the values that go into sitting at that court. So I don't want to take away more time from them, so I'll introduce them from my left here. And the first one sitting here is Rebecca Warren. She is the elected district attorney of Montour County. Judge Cheryl Allen is currently sitting on the Pennsylvania Superior Court. And Justice Corey Stevens is currently sitting on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And what we're going to do is we're going to give each of them 5 minutes to make an opening statement to you, and then we're going to have any of you in the audience ask any questions that you would like. I'm going to ask that when you ask a question, you indicate whether it's to one individual or if you want all 3 of them to answer. We have a lot of time for them to answer a lot of questions, and then we're going to give them each 5 minutes at the end to wrap it up with some closing statements and convince you to vote for them on May 19th. So why don't we start here? You're on my left. Why don't we just...
Thank you, Tom. It's nice to be back and see everyone again. Rebecca Warren again, Montour County District Attorney. And this is the point in time where traditionally the candidates get up here and they give you their resumes, which I think is very boring, but it's a necessary part of the process. So let me just give you a brief overview of my background. I've been practicing law for 24 years. And when I started practicing fresh out of law school, I was fortunate enough to go to a law firm that decided that I needed to hit the ground running. So I have been in the courtroom from the moment that I've graduated from law school. The reason that this is important is because when you are in the trenches on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, you understand the impact that the appellate court decisions have not only on you as an attorney presenting a case, but also on the litigants and ultimately on our community and our society. So after I started, I was practicing in 26 counties on a regular basis, doing primarily civil work. I was doing trial work, insurance defense. And what that means is you see all these ads for personal injury attorneys where if you've been injured, by hot coffee being spilled on your lap at McDonald's, you go to one of those attorneys. I was the attorney who was representing the people who were being sued. And I was very successful at that. I enjoyed it. After a while, I was approached by a district attorney who was looking for someone to fill a 3-year grant position as an assistant. And it was specifically designed to look at child abuse and also to handle the sex assault crimes. So I took that position. I authored the first child abuse protocol for the county where I was working. And it was a very rewarding time. I got a lot of satisfaction from that job because at that point I really felt that I was helping people who were in need. After I was finished with that position, I opened up my own law firm and I was a small business owner for about a decade, which was great experience as well. When you're signing the front of the check instead of signing the back of the check, it gives you a whole different perspective on the world and on employment. While I was practicing law in my private firm, I unfortunately had a personal family tragedy. My father and my brother were victims of a double homicide by vehicle. And the lady who killed them unfortunately had connections, and as a result of that, she was not going to be charged. As an attorney, and more importantly, as someone who had been a prosecutor, I found this completely unacceptable. I started seeking justice for my family. We wanted this woman to be held accountable and responsible for her actions. Obviously, we all make choices in life, but there are consequences for each choice that we make. Fortunately, after hiring an accident reconstructionist, researching and pleading my case to the district attorney on a pretty regular basis, charges were filed, as they should have been, and she pleaded guilty and was finally sentenced. And I felt that we finally had closure, justice had been achieved. But I found myself asking this question. If I had not been an attorney, if I did not know the justice system, would this family have received justice? And I found myself answering that question, absolutely not. And that was when I realized, in a very life-changing perspective, that our justice system is broken. Unfortunately, our society is broken. Our Judeo-Christian values, our constitutional rights are under attack every single day. I decided I had to be part of the solution. And being part of the solution means being willing to take a risk and put yourself out there and be a servant to the people. So I was approached and I was asked to consider running for district attorney, and I felt that God was leading me in that direction. So I prayed about it, I thought about it, and I realized this is what I was supposed to do. So I ran and I won with 78% of the vote in a county that's about 50-50 Democrats and Republicans. And every day I go to work and I keep my father and my brother's funeral cards with their photos on my desk with a Bible verse. And I look at that every single day and I tell myself the reason I'm coming to work is to fight for victims and to fight for my community and to do the right thing. Now, of course, we have 3 seats available on the Supreme Court. And as you heard Tom say, it's an historic time. There are only 7 justices who sit on the court. So electing 3 people will really change the face of the court. And I want you to consider voting for someone like me, someone who is pro-life. I have been recommended by the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation and Life PAC. I am pro-family. I am pro-Second Amendment. I have a concealed carry permit. I have had one for years. I am really a social conservative, and I adhere to Judeo-Christian values. And I think that that's the type of person that we need on the Supreme Court. The reason I say that is because, again, you hear all the candidates get up and tell everybody why they're the most qualified. But the 2 justices who were recently removed from the court had outstanding resumes, but that didn't prevent them from engaging in impropriety and misconduct. So I asked myself this question: why, as justices of the Supreme Court, the highest court in Pennsylvania, did these people act in a self-serving and selfish manner? And the answer that I came up with to that question is they either didn't have good value systems or they did not stand firm on their value system. And let's face it, everybody has a lot of outside influences. People who are getting big money from donors, why do they get it? My belief is to influence that person, to influence the candidate. I'm not that type of a candidate. I am not easily influenced. You can look at my track record and you will see I am someone who stands firm no matter what the personal consequence is. Because at the end of the day, I have to lay my head down on my pillow and know that I did the right thing. But more importantly, at the end of my life, I have to answer to my God for what I did. And I want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I think my time is up, so thank you.
I get the hook here. Judge Allen, would you like to? We'll flip it back and forth so that everyone gets a chance.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to be here. Did I do something wrong? No. Okay.
He's okay.
I know. I have my heels on.
I don't.
We're glad. But anyway, I am so happy to be here. And I've traveled all over the state of Pennsylvania, and I can tell you without hesitation that I love speaking to Tea Party groups more than anyone. Why? Because you get it. You know, you are informed and you have a clear understanding that our nation is in trouble. Our government is in trouble, our court system is in trouble. And now I believe the reason why we're in trouble is because we have moved away from the one and only true God. That's my belief. But you see, just as the gentleman who stood up here before and talked about the issues with immigration, you know, I believe that there is an agenda to destroy this nation. And those in charge know that it's not so easy to come before and to accomplish their goals through the legislature. Because you vote for those legislators. You put them in office. And so they're doing it through the judges. And you can have a legislative body pass a law or laws, and a judge with a stroke of a pen can wipe out those laws. And if we are not careful, if we don't stand up and fight, if we don't vote, if we don't work to encourage other people to vote, we're going to lose every constitutional right that we've ever had. A right to worship freely and to believe in our God and our Bible. A right to even mention Jesus Christ's name. Our Second Amendment rights will be gone. And the right to life. You know, I'm so tired of hearing people. I had someone ask me the other day on a radio program, don't you think that it's wrong for legislators to legislate what a woman can do with her body? Don't you think a woman should have the right to do what she wants? And I said, yes, it's that other body that you don't have the right to destroy. Now, I've been a judge in this Commonwealth for nearly 25 years. I've served in Common Pleas Court for 17 years in Allegheny County. I've served on the Superior Court as an appellate court judge since January of 2008, having been elected in 2007. I practiced law for 15 years prior to becoming a judge, and prior to going to law school, I was a school teacher, 2nd grade. I've seen a lot. And I can agree with my colleague here that our justice system is broken. It is riddled with cronyism, corruption, backroom deals, and privilege. It's a broken system. And we need judges who are willing to have the courage to honor the Constitution, to honor the law, and to put politics aside. To honor the Constitution above all else, above political parties, above what is politically popular, above what is politically expedient. That's what we need in this state and in this nation. And I encourage you, get to know these candidates. You know, we have candidates running for judge who believe that our Constitution should be a living document and that it just doesn't quite fit with the times. We have people running who think they're so smart that they would substitute their human intellect for God's divine truth. We don't need that on our courts. You know, I have lived long enough to know that I don't have all the answers. I know who is the answer. And I am willing to take my stand. I am willing to stand on the laws of this Commonwealth and nation. I am willing to stand on the Constitution of this Commonwealth and this nation. I have never been willing to go along just to get along. I am committed to trying to do what is right, not what is popular, but what is right, and that's what we need on our Supreme Court. And if you will give me the honor, I can assure you that I will serve with bold courage and unwavering commitment to constitutional justice for everyone, not just the politically empowered, but everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Stevens?
That is a tough two people that I have to speak after. And I know them both. I served on the Superior Court with Judge Allen for many years. We were both elected in different counties for the trial judge in 1991. Now, because I want to explain a couple things, I just need to point this out. I served in the House of Representatives from the Hazleton area, and I was elected to 4 terms, that's 8 years. And each year, I had an A+ rating. I'm a member of the NRA, but I had an A+ rating, and I helped pass the Victims' Bill of Rights that Pennsylvania has. Before that, if you were the victim of a crime, there would be a court hearing, and you were never notified. You never had the right to go to a judge and explain how the crime affected you. So we put all these things into law, and they are the law. And I think that that's important, because the rule of law is under attack. Now, I've said this before Baltimore, that the rule of law is under attack. We have to remember that judges should protect the rights of the accused, but there are rights of victims and the rights of law-abiding citizens. Now, I mentioned Hazleton. I'm going to tell you some things that might upset you here. My congressman, you might know his name. I know the gentleman that spoke about immigration knows. His name's Lou Barletta. Lou Barletta supports me. We're longtime personal friends, but he supports me. And I just voted this year, in February, against giving workman's compensation to an illegal alien who was hurt on the job. I can't believe it even was an issue. And I said, not only should he not get workers' compensation, because that's meant for Pennsylvania workers who are injured. All right? I also said the company that hired him should be investigated. Now, that's not my job. All right? I should also point out, as District Attorney Warren knows, I went from the legislature. I ran against an incumbent Democrat district attorney in a Democratic county, and I won. And I served as district attorney. And when I won that, nobody even asked me where I was taking the election returns, because nobody thought I would win. And I went from there to the trial court, where I handled death penalty cases, I handled protection, I handled everything, civil and criminal cases. Because we need to have people on the Supreme Court that have civil and criminal case background, all right? And from there, I went to the appellate court. So my background is in the legislature, as district attorney, as a trial judge, and I'm on the Supreme Court, but I am not, let me say this, I'm part of the solution, not part of the problem. I was appointed to fill a vacancy. I was happy. I was president judge of Superior Court working with Judge Allen, I took the Superior Court out in the community. We had court in high schools. We had court in counties. And we had court on law school and college campuses, because I want people to come and know what their courts do. And I was happy. And the governor and the legislature needed to fill a vacancy, and they needed somebody that could go right in and work, that had an office, that had the law clerks, that had everything. And it was almost the end of the summer. I was asked, and how could you say no? I had the chance to serve in the Supreme Court. And so I've been on for a year and a half. I have upheld the death penalty at least 5 times because I think it's appropriate, right? And most recently in January, I upheld it because a law enforcement officer was murdered in cold blood. And now, of course, thanks to the mayor of New York's wild statements and some other public officials, our law enforcement officers are under attack. I've been endorsed by the Pennsylvania State Troopers Association and the Firearm Owners Against Crime and some other groups that I know you would agree with. But more importantly, I just want to tell you, I can't tell you how I would decide a case. I'm not allowed to do that. But let me just tell you how I did decide a couple. I also, just last week, voted against giving unemployment compensation to somebody who's on house arrest. I mean, we have to use common sense, I think, in the law, all right? And we have some cases that are not that serious. I had a case before me where there were 4 college students that were parked in a park overlooking the Nittany Valley, and it was almost sunset, but they were parked legally. The only car there, a state trooper drove up, and the state trooper said, knocked on the window to make sure they were okay. He said, "Are you guys okay?" And the student rolled down the window and said, "We're fine. We're just here smoking some weed and getting high." So now the trooper smells the marijuana, he arrests them, and the defense lawyer goes through the court saying that the policeman had no right to even knock on the window. I said, absolutely, he had a right to knock on the window, and once he smelled the marijuana, that's probable cause to arrest him. So some of the cases are not that serious, but the Supreme Court is serious business. And crime is a major issue. And one thing that I want to tell you, what's going on in Hazleton, there's a problem with illegal immigration. There's a little town called Beaver Meadows that's on Route 93. It's between Allentown and Hazleton. The chief of police there is a friend of mine. And he's the only policeman there, so he's the chief, all right? So he stops cars all the time. He has told me he has stopped hundreds of people who have driver's licenses and who are in the country illegally, and he does the right thing. He detains them, and he calls Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and they say, let him go. And the one time, that's Carbon County, it was in the Hazleton newspaper, people went wild. Immigration said, let him go and take them to the Luzerne County line and let them go there. Well, you can imagine the people in Hazleton were not happy about that, all right? And then the other thing that he told me was, not that long ago, I think it was this year, he stopped a van that was carrying food to go to a restaurant in Hazleton. So he stopped it. People were illegal, and they had driver's licenses. And immigration, they said, you must let them keep their access card, which they have. And you must let them keep the driver's license. And since you impounded their van, you have to take them to the restaurant. I couldn't believe it. I said, why don't more people know about this? He said, nobody cares, but you care, don't you? You care. And you got to pay attention to it. The only other thing I want to say is that we have to have judges that do not make these sweeping legislative decisions. That's for the legislature. And I served in the legislature, as I told you. So I am very careful to protect the right of the legislature. For example, if you don't like the death penalty, you should not be tying up the courts with frivolous motions, and people who are on death row are there 20 and 30 years. If you don't like it, fine, this is America. Then go to the legislature and tell them you don't like it and change the law that way. Because the legislature is an open process. You could go to a committee meeting there and you could give your views. Judges, you can't lobby me If I want to just write a court order declaring this meeting tonight illegal, Cheryl and I could do that, but if we did that, of course, hopefully some judge would, I hope some judge would reprimand us, but that's a problem. So I know he's getting ready. I just want to say, judges cannot legislate from the bench. They cannot make these sweeping proclamations. You make a decision based on the law and the facts, and I believe in the Constitution. I'll say, just say this. Remember this about me. I believe in the Second Amendment. I like when you stand up, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I don't like to press 1 for English.
I can tell you that in the last several months, I've been traveling around the Commonwealth for various reasons, various organizations that I belong to, etc. And I've been at numerous events where the judge candidates have been invited to speak and ask questions and everything. So I've had the privilege of getting to know all three of these candidates, and I can tell you that I wish we had more time for them to each explain their history and their resumes. They all have websites, they all have Facebook pages, and I encourage you to look at those Facebook pages and websites and ask questions tonight, obviously, and I think they all brought some literature here as well. And I just want to say, you know, with this process that's going on right now, the primary process, the parties endorse candidates, and that process, the Republican Party especially, has endeavored to create a very ugly situation as far as I'm concerned. And I note that all of the candidates were invited, and the endorsed Republican Party candidates opted to ignore us and not even think that we were worthy of their attention. So I ask you to think about that in terms of when you go to the election and you see these little ballots and these candidate cards that the parties are going to hand out with their endorsed candidates. Don't just buy that makes them the better candidate. Look into it, do your own research, and discover who these people are and what their values really are. And actually, for those endorsed candidates, especially that Republican Party and how it's operating currently, in my opinion, you need to think twice before you say, I'm just going to pull a lever for an endorsed candidate. And that's why we have them here tonight. They were invited to come, and they chose not to. So I think that's important. And what we're going to do now is open it up to questions. Well, hand the mic. I would ask that you identify the question as if it's to one particular or if you want all three to answer. So we'll go back and forth.
Okay, this is for all the candidates. We just got back from the PLC. I think you were there. There was a big presentation on the Pennsylvania Constitution. Very interesting subject. One of the items is that, and I'm paraphrasing, a member of the society or someone in Pennsylvania cannot be impeded from voting. Do you feel, in a general sense, that voter ID would be impeding someone from voting?
Brian, are you addressing that to all three of them, or? Okay.
I'll start. I do not think it's an impediment. I think it's a method by which to eliminate fraud.
I don't think it's an impediment either, and I have to tell you a funny story. Every 2 years, the NAACP elects officers. And in the past, I've been a member. I have sort of given up my membership because I am convinced that they should change their name to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Democrats. Having said that, a few years ago, they sent letters to everyone announcing that the election of officers would be held on such and such date at such and such place. And at the conclusion of the letter, they said, no one will be permitted to vote without a valid ID. In other words, there is hardly anything that one can do in this society anymore without identification. I mean, that's a reality. Now, a few years ago, when my mother was living, we decided to take a trip to Cancun. And this is before 2001, at a time when you could just show your driver's license or any photo ID. You did not need a passport prior to 911. And my mother never drove a car. I mean, she just never drove, so she never had a license. So she had to go and get a photo ID. And that's what we did. I believe that the legislature should, and I believe they did, implement programs and procedures to facilitate people like my mother, getting voter identification. But you can't do anything in this society without identification. And there is nothing inappropriate about requiring people to show up and produce identification for voting. And I believe they should have to produce identification when they register to vote.
Don't get frustrated with me tonight. There are going to be sometimes I'm going to tell you that there are some things that might come before me as a Supreme Court Justice. And if I'm going to say that people should follow the existing laws, like not issuing executive orders to get around the law, I'm not going to purposely try to get around the law myself. I can tell you this. First of all, I want to tell you, my state representative, Tara Tuhill, just told me when I was in Harrisburg 2 weeks ago that there is now a lot of people in the Hazleton area that are in the country illegally are checking off on their driver's license application, which they have, that they are citizens. And then therefore they're getting a voter registration card and nobody's checking it. So she's trying to see what can be done about that. To your specific question, all I could tell you is that may very well come before me. And if I tell you too much tonight about how I feel, then I would have to recuse myself. And I could just tell you as a general rule, as a judge, I think if we're going to have a democracy, we cannot have voter fraud. That's all I could tell you.
Excuse me, I just have a sort of a general question because I don't know. The Supreme Court of the United States of America does not have term limits. Does the state Supreme Court have term limits? And if not, I think there should be term limits. I think that's the whole problem with our government. That's why they spend in the Senate and the House all their time just trying to get reelected. And it's a joke. So I'm just curious, is there term limits in the state Supreme Court? Thank you.
Judges are elected in Pennsylvania for 10-year terms. And there are no term limits, but there is a mandatory retirement age. Unlike the federal government, where judges are appointed for life and sometimes serve well into their 80s and in some instances 90. 90s, I don't think anybody's made it to 100, I don't know. But we are elected for 10-year terms, and after 10 years, we stand for retention, which is a yes or no vote, not a partisan election.
Well, that's better than the Supreme Court of the U.S.
Right, right. Once you're on the United States Supreme Court, you are there for life. Once you're a federal judge, you are there for life. We are elected for 10-year terms, and we have a mandatory retirement age, which the legislature may raise to 75, and most likely will raise to 75, you know, because we're not old people. At least I'm not. And, you know, sometimes the age question comes up, but what I tell people, I'm a better judge today than I was when I was 43. And I have more wisdom and more to offer. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
If I could just add, in a sense what Judge Allen said, that is a term limit. At the end of 10 years, there is a yes/no vote, okay? And that's kind of a chance. But I want you to be aware, if you're not, there's an attempt in the legislature, and there has been, it goes back, you know, many times in the session, and I voted against it every time, to take away your right to pick your judges. And it's called, they call it merit selection, but it would be like the federal, and I teach a college class one night a week, and we talk about that, and the students say, well, I like merit selection because there's no politics in it. But then when we talk about it, then they say, how do you get the judges appointed? I say, well, the governor sends the name, and then the Senate has to vote. Oh, that might be a little political. If it's going to be political, everything's political, but at least when you run for office for a 10-year term, everything's transparent, out in the open. We have to file. We have to file. If we get a donation, we have to file where it came from. But if you go to the merit selection system, then you're going to end up with a situation where you're going to have judges appointed for a long time, and you're not going to know who supported them. So I just want you to be aware of that. There is an attempt now, once again, it comes up almost every year. So far, the legislature has held strong on this and want you and them and everybody else to elect their judges. So in a sense, there is a term limit. Okay, I didn't mean to talk so long. Thank you.
No, they covered everything.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I got two quick questions. Where do we find you on the ballot? Are you Republican, Democrat?
Number one on the Republican side. I picked number one on the Republican side.
Okay, how about the other two?
I am number 5 on the Republican side.
Thank you.
I'm number 3 on the Republican side, so if you vote 1, 3, 5.
Assuming you're correct in saying the system, I'm going to use the word might be broken, how do we fix it? For all three, very quick answer.
You fix it by taking the time to get to know the people who are running. And you vote to put good, honest people in office. And unfortunately, too often when people run for judge, the public has no idea who they're voting for. People will show up, it never ceases to amaze me, people will show up in droves to vote for president, or they'll show up to vote for governor, but they think that a judge's race is an off-year election. But there is no such thing, because judges have tremendous power. And power in the hands of people who do not stand for truth is dangerous.
I can't say much more than that. You just have to pick and choose people who are going to serve you, who are going to uphold the Constitution, and are not going to become judges that just start making sweeping policy decisions that should be left to the legislature. And it's by coming to meetings like this that it's important. So you want to think about who comes to the meeting to talk to you and who doesn't come. Okay? Please think about that.
Just to echo some of those comments, people don't believe that judicial races are important, but I would say they're extremely important, because what other position are you electing that is going to be there for a decade? The person that you pick is going to be there for a decade, and they have the opportunity to change a lot of things. I too state that you need to know your candidates, and I think you have to ask the question, what is the motivation of each of these candidates who's running? Is it because they've been approached by their political party, because they're someone who goes along to get along? Is it somebody who's trying to elevate their status for some reason? I think you need to look at their heart and the reason why they're running.
Justice Stevens, you were saying your good buddy, the chief, has been stopping all these illegals with driver's licenses and there's nothing they can do. In the state of Pennsylvania, isn't there a law that says you must have insurance, and if you don't have insurance, what can be done to remove their driver's license if they're not carrying auto insurance?
There are a lot of laws in Pennsylvania that will cover that. But the problem is the federal government says that preempts state law unless they commit like an actual crime. And even then, there's not always prosecution. So the federal government says, you can't be doing these things. We're the federal government. This is a federal issue. I completely disagree with that. I think that states should have the right. My son lives in Arizona, and they're fighting this problem almost daily, trying to see, look, if the President of the United States is in charge with enforcing the law, and he chooses not to do it because he doesn't like the law, then let us states do it. And the federal government, through the federal courts, are saying, we can't. I wish I had a better answer, but I have to tell you the truth. I mean, you're not going to like all the answers. I don't like it, but that's the problem.
Actually, under our Constitution, the states do have the power to make these kind of laws. But as you know, our president and many people want to change the Constitution. And so they pick and choose. They take what they like and they leave the rest. So states do have rights under the law. Unfortunately, we're living in a time when those rights are being eroded.
I'm just going to give a quick story. It's a little bit off subject, but as a prosecutor, I see illegals in the system. And obviously, if I'm seeing them, it's because they've committed a crime. So they did something that was wrong, and they're being brought before the court to answer for that. And I am amazed at the number of people who have come to this country illegally, or they were here legally initially, but then they were supposed to return to their country after a certain period of time, and they just remain. And these people are on, from what I've seen, every sort of public assistance, welfare, food stamps, free housing, medical assistance that you can think of. And when they commit these crimes and I contact ICE and ask for these people to be investigated and deported, you really get absolutely no response. So we obviously have a problem at the top, as Judge Allen indicated and Justice Stevens indicated. We have a federal government who is not honoring the law and not enforcing it, and it just kind of trickles down from there.
Judge Allen, you had said that you like talking to the Tea Party groups, and you all seem very comfortable here talking to us, and we like what we hear. But I'll direct my question to you, Ms. Warren. When you're in front of more of a liberal group of people, and I'm assuming that you all talk to people who are more liberal, how do you convince them that you're the person they should vote for? And do you win them over? Do you get applause like you got here?
Right now, because we're in the primary and we can't cross file and we're running on the Republican ticket, we're not really immersed in the liberal culture as much. I can tell you that I'm not ashamed of what I stand for or who I am, and I give the same information to every single group. If you don't agree with me, then don't vote for me. But I think that what I stand for is truth and justice and freedom, and if people don't want to agree with me on that, then they shouldn't be voting for me.
Well, occasionally, in fact, I would say during this campaign, on more than one occasion, we've all been invited to attend judicial forums in Philadelphia. And on April 8th, We were all invited to attend a judicial forum in Philadelphia, and I had been contacted by the organizer, and I told her, actually I contacted her and told her that I wasn't going to come. Because number one, I knew there were no votes there. This is a Republican primary, and it was sponsored by the ACLU was the moderator. A woman from a Philadelphia magazine was the moderator. And this woman was very disappointed that I wasn't coming. And she told me that some of the other Republican candidates were coming, which they were initially. But as it turns out, after much prayer, I decided to go. And I discussed this with my campaign committee because I said, these people need to hear the truth. They need to hear the truth. I got there. I was the only Republican there. I saw the big screen, some of the sponsors of this event, you know, because, and they call themselves a coalition of progressives. Oh my gosh. Some of the groups were Pennsylvania National Organization of Women, Planned Parenthood, the list goes on. I was ready to turn around and walk out. I really was. I was so tempted. Like, what am I doing here? But I sat down with the Democrat candidates who were there. There were 4. And most of the questions were pretty neutral. They talked about ordinance. They talked about schools. I mean, not neutral, but, you know, I felt very comfortable. I felt comfortable the whole time I was there, actually. But then came the loaded question. Have you ever filled out a questionnaire or been endorsed by a pro-life organization? And of course, every candidate, I believe in a woman's right to choose. Woman has a right to do what she wants with her body. You know, Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. And they came to me and I said, I've been endorsed by Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation. I've been endorsed by Life PAC. I am pro-life. I make no apologies for that. And the room was silent. I mean, completely silent. But I say all that to say that what you see today is what you get. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. Because at the end of the day, I have a God that I answer to. And as long as and I believe that truth is the only thing that is eternal. All other things pass away. And so, to the best of my ability, and I have a tickle in my throat, that's why I have this cough drop. But to the best of my ability in this campaign, I will stand on the truth. I've tried to do that in my judicial career. I don't care what price I have to pay or what battle I have to fight. That's who I am, and that's who I will continue to be.
Everything that I've said, I was at a public forum last night with Judge Allen and District Attorney Warren. Everything was taped. It was played on PCN last night. So, I mean, what you see is what you get. I have a record in the legislature. You can look up the bills I was on, who supported me. Just Google me, Corey L. Stevens. You'll see the court decisions. The ones I just told you about, we just filed. And when I was a trial judge, when there was domestic abuse or child molestation, cases, very serious cases, I made sure there was a fair trial. But when a jury made a verdict, then I sentenced appropriately, to the point that lawyers told their clients, you know, you better plead guilty and then you won't have to deal with me. So that's all public record. There's nothing new about that. And I think that it's good that you asked that question, because we all had the chance to explain that what you see is what you get. I say it publicly. I've said it on TV, and it's in my court decisions. It's all there. Read my court decisions. I'm going to use the words in my court decisions as I go through the campaign. And if I'm fortunate enough to get into the general election, I'm going to point out some real differences so that people can make their choices.
This is actually for all three. Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, Section 21, and I'm going to read it because I'm old and forgetful, and I don't want to misquote. The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. So, my question to you folks is, does the state have the right to regulate popular firearms and do things like limit magazine sizes, or do the words shall not be questioned still mean shall not be questioned?
Shall not be questioned means shall not be questioned. But obviously, you know, it goes back to the discussion that we had earlier. Either you believe that the Constitution is to be taken literally, that it is a permanent, unchangeable document, or you believe, as many of our secular progressive people believe, that the Constitution was for back then and it has no basis in reality or practicality for now. And that's what we're dealing with. Under our Constitution, Pennsylvania, whether it's Pennsylvania or the United States Constitution, no, the state does not have a right to question or limit. It's very clear. But it's also very clear that all of these efforts to regulate and limit are nothing more than an effort to disarm law-abiding citizens. People who don't obey the law, they're always going to have whatever the law prohibits. But it's an effort to disarm law-abiding citizens. And it's just one more thing that we have to make sure that we are standing up and fighting. I mean, I listen to these judges, and they'll say, not you, these candidates, I listen to them. And, you know, they will say whatever their liberal people want them to say. And you know, I pointed this out. You know, they all live in very affluent neighborhoods. You know? I mean, they're against school choice, but they made a choice to live in an affluent neighborhood so they could choose where they send their kids to school. They're against, you know, they're for gun control. And they only, you know, what does a poor person who lives in a high crime area, what is that person who has no choice but to live there? And I'm talking about the poor, law-abiding citizen. And so the thinking is skewed. Something's wrong, you know. But to answer your question again, no.
We, of course, have to be careful because we can't say how we're going to decide a case. But I agree that the Constitution is to be strictly construed. It is not a living document. We are not to legislate from the bench in a judicial position. I was just talking with someone at the beginning of this evening about what my position is on Second Amendment, and I said, well, I'm a member of the NRA. I have a concealed carry permit, which I've had for years before I even decided to run for office, and I do not believe that there's any room for interpretation in the words shall not be questioned. It's even more strict, if you will, than our U.S. Constitution. And obviously, the people who wrote the Constitution for Pennsylvania decided that they wanted this to be really a right that was not questioned in any manner whatsoever. I think it's clear. And I echo the sentiments of Judge Allen. Law-abiding citizens may have their ammunition and their guns taken away from them, but the criminals will always have this, and then we are going to be defenseless. And when you look at history, why was this so important to the United States and our founding fathers? It was because of the fact that societies that are oppressed generally take all the guns from their citizens and they're helpless against the government. So we have to stand firm on our constitutional rights and make sure that we are not questioned.
I don't want to depend on Immigrations and Custom Enforcement to protect my safety, all right? Or else I'll be gone already, all right? I'm in an unusual position. I better explain this. We were talking about retention, yes or no votes. At the end of a term of a judge that's elected, and I was elected to the Superior Court, I ran for a retention, a yes-no vote, and I won. I have done this research. I am the first one on the Supreme Court because I was appointed to fill a vacancy, and nobody said to me, you can't run. Usually when you get an appointment, they say you can't run. I don't know if they forgot or what, but I didn't remind anybody because I wanted to run. So I looked to see if I could run on a yes-no vote. And I did the research, and I can't. So now I'm in a contested election, all right? So I have to be careful. I can't, as I told you, don't get frustrated. There's some things I can't say. I can't tell you how I would interpret those words because they very well may come before me. I can tell you I belonged to the Nescapec Hunting and Rifle Club for over 20 years, all right? I can tell you that my alarm system at home is an AR-15 and a Glock 23. I don't need anything beyond that. So if I start talking about how I would vote, then if it does come before me, I have to recuse myself or get out of the case. Do you want that?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to remind Justice Stevens, if you want to purchase some tickets at the back table, we're raffling off a Caltech shotgun. So if you want to
And I just want to add that I too am a member of the NRA.
All three of you can take a shot at it if you want. For about 30 years now, we've had one particularly nasty fellow who's been filing appeal after appeal after appeal on the death sentence. Mia Jamal, I believe. And
Speak up.
where is the end to the appeals? I want to see, I want to see get a trial speedily, not 6 years down the road. I want to see him get a quick, go to the Superior Court, I suppose, and then to the Supreme Court, and that's the end of it.
It's federal.
Put him where he belongs, and then if he's gotten the death penalty instead of life, let's do what's necessary and make sure the governor does it. Is there anything, how does this process seem to go on forever?
Well, I will say this, that he was able to go to the federal court and have his death sentence taken away. Okay, so he is in jail, in prison for life. Now, in our court system, unfortunately, people can file actions under the Post-Conviction Relief Act, and raise issues. Whether they're real or not real, they have a right to raise them. And it's very frustrating as a judge because sometimes it really takes a lot of our time. But he does not have a death sentence, and he won't have a death. He's not subject to the death penalty. I just wanted to make that clear.
I'm not addressing him particularly. I want to let you know what the problem is. And I mentioned this at the forum last night. We have a death penalty. To get the death penalty, a jury has to convict somebody beyond a reasonable doubt that there was a first-degree murder. And at the time, the legislature picked aggravating circumstances. I won't go, some of them are example, killing a police officer in the line of duty, murdering a child, torture. If one of those things is present, as District Attorney Warren knows, the District Attorney can seek the death penalty, all right? So, then there's the trial. They prove beyond a reasonable doubt the person's guilty. Then there's a separate hearing to give the death penalty. And if they give the death penalty, then the appeals start. Here's a problem that I've run into on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We have people on death row 10, 20, 30 years. And Chief Justice Casile wrote in opinions, and I have joined them, that some lawyers are acting unethically because they're against the death penalty, so they keep filing appeals. So lawyer number one says on appeal, the trial lawyer was ineffective. That's the constitutional right to effective counsel. They're saying ineffective. Then after the appeal, the next lawyer says, well, the appeals lawyer was ineffective. All right, so this goes on and on for a while. Finally, you know, and I've upheld the death penalty at least 5 times in the last year and a half. What happens next is, and this is the frustrating part, you elect your Supreme Court justices, and they go through this very carefully. We go through it very carefully. It's a death penalty. It's not a frivolous case. And sometimes it takes a while. But 20 or 30 years, it should not take. But what happens is, we say, okay, everything has been looked at. Everything is fair. Next day, a federal judge, who hasn't seen the case, issues a ruling staying it. And that frustrates me because that's like saying to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, you guys are irrelevant. And all the work you just did doesn't matter. And that's the way the process is. And until Congress and the state legislature can somehow say, look, you're going to have this many appeals, that's it. That's it. And then I can't say too much more because the governor's issued a moratorium, and that case is going to come before the Supreme Court. We're busy, in case you didn't notice. So I want to explain the problem.
Before I want to interrupt you before you go, we're getting a little close on the time, so if we could answer this question, and then we're going to 2 more, I think. So if we could get the questions, yeah, just keep them a little short because then we'll have not enough time for the last couple of questions.
Sure, make that roll after both of you got to speak.
And I do apologize for that.
That's okay. With regard to these cases, it's very frustrating in the criminal justice system, particularly as a prosecutor, because as Justice Stevens noted, these individuals, these defendants have had trials or they've pleaded guilty and then they decide after the fact they don't like the outcome. So they are allowed to appeal their case. If it's not a death penalty case, it goes to the Superior Court. If it is a death penalty case, it goes to the Supreme Court because of the seriousness of the offense, of the sentence. But once that appeal period expires, they have the right under the Post-Conviction Relief Act, which we call PCRAs, to just file one right after the other. And they do, and then if they're not successful in the state court system, then they go to the federal system and they start filing there as well. This is part of our system that really needs to be re-examined because most of these PCRA filings are completely lacking of any sort of merit whatsoever, and they are clogging up our court systems. They are diverting our attention from serious cases that need to be addressed, and most importantly, they are costing the taxpayers tons of money needlessly.
Good evening. I don't know if you will be handling tort cases, but I think our tort system is badly broken. The American role force is winner of cases to pay their own expenses, and the rest of the world loser pays for both sides, and also joint and several liability. Could you comment on your positions on the tort system and whether it's broken?
Well, you know, now I think we're getting a little dangerously close to You know, I think it would be kind of difficult to answer your questions without stepping over the line. Yes, we do hear on the Superior Court tort cases. Certainly on the Supreme Court, we will be hearing tort cases. But I just really don't feel comfortable answering your question.
I can just refer to my background, which I told you in my opening statement, and that is I did insurance defense work in 26 counties in Pennsylvania. So obviously I was on the, excuse me, I was on the side where we were defending against these types of claims. And obviously we have situations, we have lawsuits where someone has been seriously injured and they need to be compensated fairly, but then we do have a lot of frivolous actions, unfortunately. And attorneys know when they're filing that some of these are frivolous, but what they want is, I'm sure you've heard this term, nuisance value. And they used to call up to the insurance companies and also to the attorneys and say, look, I know I don't have a really good case here, but what will you give me to go away? And we need insurance companies and defense attorneys like myself who said, we don't have those conversations. Either you have a legitimate lawsuit or you don't. If you don't, we're defending. You are going to have to spend your money and your time in order to pursue this. And if you lose, well, then you lose. And let me tell you, when I was on the other side, they lost.
We'll take one final question over here. And then Ronnie can ask the last question since he's the chairman.
First of all, I'd like to thank all three of you for coming out tonight. I'd like to applaud your integrity, and I thank you for your time. The two ladies that made the reference to being grounded in God, amen. We need to get back to God in America, and I'm sure you feel the same way, sir. To Judge Allen, I want to thank you for your strong intestinal fortitude in braving the lion's den, going to that liberal meeting. Your chutzpah, I even wrote that down on the paper there. And I understand that you're running for judicial rather than legislative positions, but I have two issues here. I had three, but the gentleman in the purple shirt covered one of them. Would you get behind HB 76, previously labeled as HB 1776, to eradicate the school district property tax and replace that revenue by slightly raising the PA sales tax? Issue number two, pardon me, I believe firmly that many of the cultural and societal problems we're currently facing in America have their roots in the fact that the federal government, through the Department of Education, is running our public school system. Into the ground, I may add. Are you an ardent supporter of the 10th Amendment? Will you get behind a movement to get our schools back to our founding fathers' principles of more localized control?
Thank you. Those are great questions. I can tell you in the legislature that this has been going on a while now. When I was in the legislature, we tried exactly that. If the sales tax were raised a slight, and I'm talking a small amount, and it were applied to everything, at the time, property taxes could have been eliminated. But the problem was there are special interest groups that didn't want the sales tax applied to those groups. And unfortunately, one of them was the clothing industry, and now we have no factories. When I first campaigned not that long ago, I used to go into factories in Hazleton. They're gone, and that's sad. Those people worked hard. So
I actually had that very same idea. I mentioned it to people about, I don't know, 10 to 25 years ago. Now, I would have no problem with 10%. From what I understand, what they're talking about is 7. But it would have to be combined with getting rid of the school district property tax. They can't be, you know.
well, yeah, it's what they're suggesting now was not what we were talking. At the time, it would have gone to, I think it would have gone up to like 7.5%. I don't know what the numbers would be now. As to the other question, again, that, as I'll use Judge Allen's words, that's dangerously close to me not being able to say anything. And besides that, you need to go to your state legislators on that. And some of those issues may come before the Supreme Court.
And I just agree with everything. I mean, I, as a tax-paying citizen, I would prefer to see an increased sales tax and less in the way of property tax. And I think that it would go a long way to deal with some of the inequities in our school system. Because I'm a believer in, I mean, I would not be here but for the opportunity that I had to receive an education. And it really sickens me to see what has happened to our public school system. It really does. And as a former school teacher, it makes me very sad. And so, you know, I am for doing whatever is necessary within reason to make sure that, you know, kids get what they need. But I can't tell you how I would roll on those cases should they come to the Supreme Court or even to the Superior. They're not likely to come to the Superior Court. They would either come to the Commonwealth Court or the Supreme Court.
With regard to that particular tax issue, I know that Senator Fulmer is a big advocate of changing the taxing structure, and I think that it's a very wise approach. With regard to the school systems, I think the misconception is if you throw more money at something, you're going to get a better quality product. And that is so far from the truth. My grandmother was a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, and a lot of my family members are teachers or recently retired teachers. And they can tell you about the degradation of our school system when the teachers had to start disciplining the children more because the children weren't being disciplined at home, and starting to intervene more in a parental or a guardian type of role than that of actual teacher. So obviously our school systems are also broken. There's no easy fix to that, but I completely disagree with throwing more money at the problem because that is definitely not the solution.
My question is simple. It's a campaign question. Both my mother and my father are sitting up in front of you there. Raise your hand, Mom and Dad. My mother has always been faithful in remembering Father's Day for me. I have 2 kids. So I'd like to know from you, where can we send a campaign donation if we want to do that?
That's the best question of the night. I'm just kidding.
I agree.
Speak slowly so we have time to get our pens out.
Well, there are 2 ways. I mean, either you can go online. I have a website, judgesheryllallen.com, and it's on the little flyer that I have back there, and people can donate online. There's also an address, which is my campaign headquarters, where donations can be mailed.
First, I want to thank you all. And I was able to get here a little bit early and talk to you, but I have to go back to Luzerne County, so don't be offended if I leave when we're done here. But my address is also, I have a website on Facebook, Justice Stevens for Supreme Court, but I'm going to make sure that Tom has my mailing address. But I know that I speak for the 3 of us, we would appreciate anything we want to do, but most importantly, you need to vote, and you need to get your neighbors to vote and your friends, and even people you don't like, get them to vote, as long as you explain how to vote. Thank you.
Okay, as judicial candidates, we cannot personally request donations or contributions, and we cannot accept them. However, my campaign treasurer's address is 1217 Bloom Road, Danville, and the zip code is 17821. But we are taking donations this evening because I brought Dominic from my campaign with me, and so you can just hand him whatever you want because he can take it. Thank you.
Yeah, Dominic.
I'm sorry, you forgot you hadn't.
Since you gave an address, I will give an address too. It is 373 Vanadium, Vanadium Road, and that's Pittsburgh 15243. And I didn't bring a staff member, but I'm sure that Mr. Carroll would be very happy to receive any donations to my campaign. But I am really grateful to have this opportunity to speak to you, and I thank you for coming out. And I encourage you to vote, to tell your friends to vote. You know, 135, if you want to keep hope alive.
Thank you, and thank you again for just being friendly and giving us a chance to talk tonight. Thank you too, Tom, for the invitation.
I'm the only candidate who didn't properly thank you, so thank you very much. It's always nice to be here, and I went to the Berks County Patriots meeting, and I love their slogan, if not us, who? If not now, when? So vote on May 19th, and thank you again.
I think that's an amazingly appropriate way that we ended this forum tonight. I truly appreciate all three of the candidates coming, and I think they provided us a lot of information. I would give them a round of applause again. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to wrap a little business up with that election, and then we're going to do the final questions that we have doing of the audience to the board.
All right. So the votes were tallied, and we had 49 yes, 9 no votes, 1 abstention. If you add that up, it actually does not come up to 50, so 1 vote is missing somewhere, so that's probably where it went. The changes pass, and they are effective immediately.
Thank you. Ronnie.
I hope you all enjoyed hearing from the candidates. We're going to try to do as much of that as we can to bring you as much information as possible. This is the time that we leave for you guys to make comments or ask questions. The floor is yours. Just wait for a microphone, please. Raise your hand and wait for a microphone.
50-50 first?
Yeah, sure. Come on up, Brian. While Brian's coming up, did anybody see the news on the way over here? The blonde actress that just stabbed her husband. She was in the Legally Blonde movie. Reese, somebody? Reese? No, with her knife.
Okay, wait. Ronnie, stay on up here.
Is this Michael?
Oh, man. I knew that was coming, too, because I think he told that at the executive board meeting.
17 times.
17 times. I haven't been to that many of them. Okay. So, get your tickets out. Now, I'm going to do an advertisement real quick. In fact, if I could get a couple helpers. This is a survey. It's for bus trips and stuff. If you didn't get it on the way in, grab one and take the survey, drop them off on the table that I was at selling the raffle tickets. Okay. The winner is 667. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you. It's $83 is the winning. So that's half, so it's 166. The winner is 667-208. Oh. And everybody was coming up to me. There he is. Dan, fantastic. Super. There you go. Thank you very much. There you go.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, questions or comments? Raise your hand and wait for a microphone. Anybody? Right over here.
I think we have a young man right next to Mr. Dees who also wants to ask him a question.
Hey, my name's Matthew Dietz. Just want to thank everybody for the support. I'm running for Northampton County Council in District 4. So I want to thank everyone who's come out and helped me out. I just want to let you know also we're trying to fill a few more polling stations. So if anyone's free on May 19th, like to help us out up in the Slate Belt area to help work a poll, we have a sign-up sheet, and to get information, we'd love to have your help. Thanks a lot.
Actually, I'll also note that Dean Browning is also here. He's running for Lehigh County Commission, and I'm sure both candidates could use help. So if anybody wants to work polls or put up signs, get to these guys and see if you can help them out.
Anyone else? Comments or questions? Who's going to go to Gettysburg with us on August 1st? If you haven't signed up, come and see me. I have a list, and if you need to think about it quickly. There's only 51 seats. Actually, we have 15 signed up, so 51 minus 15. You do the math.
Okay.
If there are no more comments,
One more. Got one over there.
One over here.
One more, real quick. On that sheet that you're looking at, there's a bus trip out to Columbus, Ohio with AFP,
Americans for Prosperity.
And if you're interested, I actually won at the PLC. I won the trip to go, so I'm definitely going. But if people are interested, I'll find more information out. But just take a look at it. It's the 21st, 22nd of August. Also, the pig roast is looking like the 15th of August, so keep that in mind also. Thanks.
If there are no more comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
John Mataboni moves to close. Is there a second? Joan Rosenthal. We're adjourned. Thank you very much. See you next month.